Iran says a desperate US Navy is now boarding ships with medical cargo, turning a blockade into open-sea looting of humanitarian supplies. Tehran claims US forces hijacked a vessel carrying life-saving kidney dialysis equipment, calling the operation pure piracy in the Gulf of Oman. After oil tankers, Iran alleges even medical shipments are being grabbed, accusing Washington of covering battlefield failure with seizures at sea. Amid a tense naval face-off and a fragile ceasefire, Iran has leveled a serious allegation against the US Navy over its latest boarding operation at sea. On April 23, the Iranian Red Crescent claimed that a ship hijacked by US forces near Iran's coastline was carrying medical cargo rather than military supplies. According to the organization, the shipment included materials needed to produce vital medical supplies for kidney patients who depend on regular dialysis treatment. The Red Crescent said the cargo belonged to its own medical subsidiary, Sahar Medical Equipment Company, which manufactures disposable medical equipment for Iran's health sector. Officials warned that interrupting these deliveries could directly endanger dialysis patients, whose lives rely on a stable flow of such specialized supplies. The organization further accused US forces of endangering the civilian crew and intimidating them during the boarding and seizure of the vessel. In a legal escalation, the Red Crescent argued that the operation could amount to an unlawful use of force under UN General Assembly Resolution 3314, which defines acts of aggression. Iranian military officials added that the presence of sailors' families aboard the hijacked ship complicated any immediate response from Tehran. They said civilian safety had to be prioritized and assessed before Iran could consider how and when to retaliate against US forces. Nevertheless, Iranian forces later announced that they had launched drone strikes targeting US vessels in response to what they described as piracy against a humanitarian ship. Officials in Tehran have warned that further action will follow once they are certain the crew and accompanying family members out of harm's way. Separately, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says it has intercepted additional vessels in the Strait of Hormuz over alleged violations of its new navigation rules, further raising the stakes for commercial shipping in the region. Despite the extension of the US-Iran truce, the maritime standoff between the two sides has intensified further, with American forces now seizing Iranian-linked tankers well beyond the Strait of Hormuz. On April 23, the US military seized a large crude carrier, MT Majestic, carrying Iranian crude in the Indian Ocean, marking one of the most significant intercepts of the Shadow Fleet campaign. US Attorney Jeanine Pirro stated that the seized ship, MT Majestic, carried approximately 1.9 million barrels of Iranian oil, reflecting the scale of Iran's maritime export network. Pirro also noted that the similarly seized tanker MT Tiffany, taken earlier in the week, also carried roughly 1.9 million barrels of Iranian crude, underscoring a pattern of high-volume captures. The location of the Majestic seizure was close to where the Tiffany was boarded earlier in the Indian Ocean, suggesting that US forces are focusing on a specific corridor used by Iran-linked tankers. Pirro added that her office has executed some of the nation's most complex seizure warrants, positioning these operations within a broader legal framework for targeting sanctions-busting vessels. The attorney also hinted at the earlier seizure of oil tankers carrying Venezuelan crude, including the ship's skipper, Bella 1, and Veronica. The US Department of War justified the operation as an effort to intercept ships that are alleged to be violating sanctions and supporting Iran's war-related revenue flows. These seizures form part of a wider American crackdown on Iran's so-called Shadow Fleet, a network of tankers that operate under false flags or limited identification to evade scrutiny. The broader aim is to squeeze Iran's oil revenues, which have long served as a critical source of funding for Tehran's military programs and regional activities. The US military has claimed that its blockade and interdiction measures have so far forced at least 33 ships to turn back or return to port while attempting to navigate the Strait of Hormuz area. The latest seizure of the Majestic came shortly after President Trump claimed total US control of the Strait of Hormuz and issued shoot-and-kill orders against vessels ignoring the blockade. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "Iran is having a very hard time figuring out who their leader is. They just don't know. The infighting is between the hardliners, who have been losing badly on the battlefield, and the moderates, who are not very moderate at all, but gaining respect, is crazy. We have total control over the Strait of Hormuz. No ship can enter or leave without the approval of the United States Navy. It is sealed up tight, until such time as Iran is able to make a deal." Unquote. The The US military's claim that it would not allow Iranian ships to transit through the Hormuz Strait has been sharply contradicted, as new reports suggest that multiple Iranian-linked vessels have in fact passed through these strategic waters. Maritime intelligence agency Lloyd's List has asserted that dozens of Iranian ships have successfully crossed the Hormuz Strait, undermining Washington's narrative of a tight and impenetrable blockade. Data compiled by Lloyd's List, and reported by the outlet Iran International on April 20 ahead of the truce's expiry, paints a very different picture from US military briefings and official statements. At least 26 ships connected to Iran's so-called Shadow Fleet are reported to have bypassed the US blockade on Tehran's ports, slipping through the cracks of enforcement and continuing their journeys. The report cited vessel tracking data that showed continued tanker movements tied to Iranian trade, indicating that energy shipments and commercial routes have remained active despite public claims of severe restrictions. Several oil and gas tankers carrying Iranian energy exports are said to have departed the Gulf despite the curbs, suggesting that Iran's export lifelines are far from completely severed. Iran's Shadow Fleet is described as a network of aging or lightly regulated ships specifically used to evade international sanctions and keep vital oil and gas revenues flowing. These ships typically operate with obscured ownership structures and masked tracking data to move oil and gas under the radar, making it difficult for authorities to monitor, intercept, or halt their activities. Amid this prolonged and extended ceasefire agreement that's supposed to bring calm to the region, the US military's secretive game plan for securing and dominating the vital Hormuz Strait has been dramatically leaked to the public on April 23, exposing their strategies. According to a recent report, the US is actively preparing comprehensive contingency plans that outline potential strikes against Iran's heavily fortified defenses positioned strategically throughout the Hormuz Strait to neutralize any emerging threats. The US Navy is intensely focused on devising tactics to neutralize all major Iranian threats in the Hormuz Strait, ready to spring into action immediately if the fragile truce shatters and escalates into full-blown conflict once again. The US military is zeroing in its efforts on countering the full spectrum of Iranian weapons, including those insidious sea mines, swift fast attack boats, and various other advanced armaments designed to wreak havoc in contested waters. These explosive details about the US plans and Trump's claims were first reported in a CNN broadcast on April 23, as confirmed and highlighted by the reliable source Iran International, bringing the story to a wider global audience. A CNN reporter revealed, quote, US military officials are developing new plans to target Iran's capabilities in the Strait of Hormuz in the event the current ceasefire with Iran falls apart, multiple sources tell me. Another option, target individual Iranian military leaders and other obstructionists US officials believe are actively undermining negotiations, unquote. A Defense Department official said, quote, due to operation security, we do not discuss future or hypothetical movements. The US military continues to provide the president options, and all options remain on the table, unquote. The US military's detailed operational plans and strategic assessments appeared to directly contradict the public claims made by the US president regarding the overall security and accessibility of the vital Hormuz Strait waterway. On April 23, President Trump confidently stated that the United States now has complete and unchallenged control over the Hormuz Strait, even as a naval blockade continues to create significant tensions in the region.
You know, that the Strait, what we've done with the blockade is amazing, and nobody gets through, and nobody wants to get through. Nobody's trying. The one tried, they shut out the engine, but nobody's trying. We have complete control. Now they can drop their mines in there and do all those stupid things. It's just going to take longer for them to make money because the mines are going to affect them much more than they're going to affect us. But and we don't know that they're doing that, but they could be that they're not. If they're doing it, it's a very foolish thing to do. Just like for Iran to shoot at Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, and Kuwait, Bahrain, all the different places they shot. Nobody expected that. They thought they'd shoot at Israel in all fairness, but you didn't expect they'd be shooting at numerous other countries. I think it was a big mistake. If they're putting mines down, it's a big mistake for them.
Just a day before Trump claimed that the US fully controls the Hormuz Strait, the Iranian military took bold action by seizing 2 commercial ships right in the heart of the strategically crucial waterway. Additionally, various maritime agencies and tracking services have reported that ships linked to Iran have been successfully crossing the Hormuz Strait without interruption, even amid the ongoing naval blockade imposed by the United States.